A cheers to you, lovely patrons. It is Monday. It's very much Monday. May 6th. It's May, everybody. It's May. There's a new episode of Trailer Jones, Bradley Speeds just reminds me of. Check it out. Put it up late last night. Apologies. Trailer Jones goes up around the beginning of the month, but there's no specific day that Trailer Jones goes up. And I apologize for that. That is just kind of the reality of the situation. What's up, everybody? It is Cup of Jones. Last week was crazy. I was doing something almost every day this week, and last week I felt like I mostly saw my allies through my monitor because we had a big meeting on Monday where we went through all of May. We're going to be streaming in May, what everybody's going to be reviewing in May, budget-wise, what we want to spend before we move into E3. And then Friday was an E3 specific meeting. A lot of the stuff, unfortunately, from that meeting we can't really talk about because that's like who's going to be on what press conference, what time the press conferences start. I will be putting together an E3 promo that'll have all of that information, but a lot of that isn't very patrony, spoilery, advanced stuff that we could talk about. It's not that exciting. We do have some fun guests that we were trying to land. I think I might have got a couple of really fun people to come on our set during E3 to talk about stuff. One thing that we haven't really talked about with E3, if I want to kick things off talking about E3, is the definitiveness, pencil it in right now, of a Friday day. Friday will be a day, but it'll also be an E3 day for us. And I think, at least personally, there was something about I don't know, almost like a sting of failure on Friday. We would finish our stream on Thursday night after the final day of E3. We're all exhausted, and inevitably there's gonna be something that we missed. And so we'd constantly be looking back at our coverage and be like, how can we shuffle things around? What can we do differently? Last year, and I think believe we're going to be doing that again this year, at least on one day, is have an early crew. So not everybody is going to be at E3 until, because I think E3 is going pretty late this year. I think till 7 o'clock, which is late for E3. And so then that gives us only a short amount of time to get through traffic, to get back to the, either my garage or Game Trailers back in the day or our studio this year. And so we're going to be, again, bringing back the idea that some people will leave early and then start our coverage a little bit early with their impressions. But anyway, it was always this kind of juggling act of when are we going to, how can we make more time? How can we add an hour onto our day and try to maximize that hour? And I think no matter what, we're just going to have stuff on Friday to talk about. And I think kind of one extra day to wrap up all of the crazy stuff that happened during E3 is good for two reasons. One, it opens up the possibility to bring in fun guests, like we'll hopefully solidify concrete this year. And also, it's just kind of fun to just, now that the madness is over, to look back at all the stuff that we've done and just kind of add up all of E3. I don't know if all of the allies will be there on the final day. It depends on how the week shakes out, but definitely put that Friday after E3 into the schedule. Also, we're going to be doing the Easy Allies podcast the night before. That is currently in our schedule. Normally we do that Tuesday nights because that's normally when the Easy Allies podcast is. And so E3 is over. The first day, we finally got a chance to play games, and then we get onto our set, and then we do impressions for an hour or two, and then we do the podcast. And even though the podcast is discussing news, is discussing stuff that's happened over the last couple days, it always felt weird because everybody was just frothing at the bit to get on that desk and talk about cool stuff that they had checked out that day. And so, in classic Easy Allies podcast style, unfortunately, the Nintendo Direct will not be a part of the podcast that week for posterity, but we will be mentioning that on several occasions and then getting that done ahead of time. And then, so that means Tuesday night we can just do a straight run of impressions. So yeah, little changes like that, little scheduling stuff that, again, you're going to get more of a clear picture of what E3 is going to look like. It's going to be interesting to see what happens that Saturday because Saturday is EA Play. We don't have their schedule yet. I'm assuming EA is going to start their big Treehouse day or whatever, like their big day of interviews, maybe with some cool announcements or something, or maybe that first interview will be Jedi Fallen Order, and that might be good to do reactions for. We don't know. So right now, it looks like our coverage starts Sunday morning with the first press conference that day. But and we will be doing reactions for Nintendo. I think there's a question. Maybe I can just say this right now, or I think somebody maybe reached out to me on Twitter wondering about Kyle, what Kyle was up to this year. Kyle will be busy during the days on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so he will not be around for the Nintendo press conference, but Kyle is signed up for press conferences on Sunday and Monday. So, and myself as well. I went to a couple of press conferences last year. Went to EA for their press conference because I got to play some games at the same time. Same with Sony. Sony always had some demos, but EA's changing their stuff up, and Sony's not going to be there. So I don't think I'm going to be missing any press conferences this year. So EA does not tell Easy Allies the schedule months in advance. We do not. So yeah, there we go. And yeah, so that's kind of just a rough idea of what's going on with E3. Again, promo coming later this month. I got to be honest with you, Allies. I sat and stared at my computer writing up our E3 and promo, just general Patreon promos that I want to get done this month. Like, you know, aside from other shows that we have to do, obviously, it's like pretty much my number one priority. And that's hard. It's hard to write a promo. It's hard to write something that will appeal to everybody. I find myself kind of shifting back and forth between different languages and talking about who I think is going to be watching that promo and who I want to talk to and how I want to explain Easy Allies for that person. But obviously you have people that, you know, don't know us but understand gaming channels, people that don't know us and don't understand gaming channels, people that know us and just happen to be stumbling across this video, people that know us but haven't made the jump to be a patron yet, and so they're going to our Patreon and seeing about, you know, reading about us, and so might have to change up that promo a little bit depending on whether you see it on YouTube or social media or Patreon. But yeah, it's weird. I write sentences of that promo and then delete them because they sound gross. It's really tricky to try to find the right language for a promo. So Bosman is E3. E3 would crumble without Kyle, says chat. Says Ray Luazes specifically. Yikes. Get that Bosman out of my E3. Clean that E3 up. But last week was a crazy week. Mr. Ian Hink came back for a week. Ian has been out and is out again now. Was only in town for about 4 or 5 days. But while Ian was in town, we did get a lot done. Shot some more episodes of Tabletop Escapades that you'll be getting soon. We shot a Easy Update episode with Dawn on set that you can see right now. And Ian technically fixed a lot of fun stuff in the studio. Not necessarily, you know, like we were curious to try some of that stuff while Ian was gone, but given that Ian has already put so much work into the studio, I definitely want him to be hands-on, not just in making those decisions, but I guess to make those decisions faster while that stuff is going on. And we surprised all of you with him being back Tuesday night when he appeared briefly on the group stream. Again, if you missed it, last Tuesday night's group stream was a Hall of Greats, and Ian came back to do a presentation for that. And I totally failed Monday morning. If you rewind time and go back, I knew Ian was going to be in town, and Blood messaged me, I think it was on Slack or something, or he said, oh, the lights, Go Button had fixed the lights last week. And I was like, yeah, Ian's in the office fixing the lights. No, he's not. Ian is talking with Go Button, who are in the office by themselves. I don't know. Like, I kind of backpedaled out of that one. So you can go back and you can see the fear in my eyes when I'm like, oh, crap. Because that's always the thing whenever you're trying to... That's why I can never trust Amanda's parents with a surprise, because they just love their daughter too much and they're too close to Amanda and they just can't keep secrets. They know they're going to find some kind of opportunity like that to be like, yeah, well, we can take care of that when we're in town next week. Oops. So, but it was nice having Ian back, and we fixed the lights. Fingers crossed. We found out that the majority of the lighting issues that we had were a problem with how everything was programmed, about how specific lights and specific programs were programmed into our software that we use. And so we're still, learning the ins and outs of that. And I believe all of that was streamlined. I still saw the desk blink once, I believe in the first podcast, and we were shooting something the other day, I think friend code or something, and all of the white lights up top flickered at one point. So, it's a fun adventure trying to get everything perfectly ironed out in that studio. We also made some improvements to our streaming space in terms of audio. We now have a compressor. Previously, we were running software, again, that was handling the sound before that sound got into XSplit. That caused us all to sound like robots after like an hour and a half for some reason, because it was just too much for the computer to handle. So we've now bought equipment that, so all of the microphones are going into a mixer. That mixer is going into a compressor board, and then that is sending that signal back out to the PC. Did a test for the community showcase. We're going to do another test tomorrow night, obviously, for the group stream. Sounds pretty good. People seem to dig it while we were live. We are maybe thinking of possibly in the future buying a new mixer in there, because right now we have 4 microphones that are set up to record everybody. For special shoots, we've done our lavalier microphones if we want to specifically isolate. Like right now, you can check out the first episode of Achieve It Yourself, which is our new Patreon exclusive show. We put the first episode for everybody up on YouTube, and everybody wore lavs for that, and it sounds nice. So if we get another mixer, that would enable us to have more inputs, which means we can put more microphones in there, which also might just solve the issue of lots of people walking around without putting too many objects in people's way for them to bump into microphones. But so it was nice to make the main stage look a little bit better, make the streaming room sound a little bit better. And we are buying all sorts of equipment. I got a big list of all this stuff, mostly cables. Lots of XLR cables, lots of XLR splitters, lots of converters, another headphone hub, which we currently have in which is cheap. I think it was like $70, which means that one audio signal goes into a box, and then that box sends out a bunch of headphone cables so that we all can listen to reactions and stuff like that when we do it. We're going to get another one of those for the streaming stage. And our E3 meeting on Friday also was a lot about kind of the back and forth of like how those rooms are eventually going to talk to each other. And this is technology that we can continually evolve as we're in the studio. But we are looking at how E3 is going to go, how we are going to address E3. And I think on average, as we looked at everything, it's going to make sense that there are at least 4 of us focused. 5 might be a little much for that table for E3. Bossman made a point that it works for Tabletop Escapades, but it might look a little cluttered during E3. So most of the time, you're going to see 4 of us covering all of the stuff on Sunday and Monday, and then the streaming room will basically exist as a room we'll have the control room as well. Whoever Damian or Ian or myself that is on the controls, and then it'll be fun to throw to the streaming room and get some points from people, some extra opinions from people that were not on the desk following all the press conferences and news that's dropping, and then be able to have a very clean transition of the people that are on that desk, and then to shoot back to the main room from the streaming room. And so you don't see people getting up out of chairs and just have these weird pauses in between our coverage, depending on who's going to be on the desk talking about it. So and we might rehearse that a little bit, but it's just another way. We went back through our graphics, try to figure out, color-wise, if there's anything we want to change for this year. I think we're going to go from blue last year to maybe red this year, change it up. So, a lot of those little tiny things that you're going to be seeing more of as we prepare It's going to be interesting because I'm going to be using graphics from last year, but footage from this year, because obviously we don't want to show any garage in new graphics for E3 that were killed last year. Yeah, I mean, basically the same graphics package, but reproduced for the 2019 version. And as was requested, I just believe last week and several times on Cup of Jones, we're going to be getting a TV stand, 2 TV stands and 2 monitors for the back of the room, not only for E3, but for other shows, for people who would like to use them. I think Ben has expressed an interest to liven up the back a little bit. I think Kyle currently likes the way it is set up in the Easy Allies podcast, because we can switch between multiple cameras. So along with Damiani dabbling in various shelves and, decorations that he has brought out for episodes of Friend Code, we are experimenting, and we'll continue to experiment over the next couple months with just visually ways to spice up that space. So I think the trick is how big those monitors going to be, what is the stand going to look like. If we get a nice pretty stand that I think fits in with the aesthetic of the space, then we'll feel a little more comfortable just showing that monitor on its stand by itself. Or is this something where we want to maybe build a set piece, kind of like another version of the wall, to make it look like even though we're moving this thing around, it is still a part of the set. All of that will be purchased slowly as we go through the month of May, and then Ian is scheduled to return to us right before E3. We will set up all of that equipment as soon as humanly possible and test it all as much as we can before we go live. But it was nice to make the space look and sound a little bit better. And thank you very much for, Ian, for doing that. And yes, we are bringing a list of Patreon exclusive shows to our website. That was another thing that was requested. I also passed on to Ian the takeaway that RPG trivia game show sounds like it's a trivia game show about RPGs. He said you're not wrong, and he was making plans to update that soon. We have lots of spoiler modes this month. If you missed it already, we put up our spoiler mode for Avengers, of course, which is the end of last month. But right after this, I'm going to be sitting down with Mr. Michael Damiani, and we're going to be going through the 4th episode of Game of Thrones, which was last night. And there are, man, help me with the blood. I don't know why none of these are jumping to mind. But basically looking ahead at this month and trying to schedule a lot of things. And I noticed that there were lots of spoiler modes, and I also noticed that a lot of the allies are going on vacation. I'm going to be going on vacation this weekend. I'm going to be leaving on Thursday and getting back late Monday night. Life is Strange Episode 3 is one of them. Thank you, Blood. One of our spoiler modes we're going to be doing this month. John Wick is this month, too. I'm tempted to maybe do spoiler mode after that. Oh, and Detective Pikachu again. It's most likely going to be a spoiler mode also this month. Definitely looking forward to that. We're going to be losing Huber for 2 weeks. So I'm not going to be doing a Cup of Jones heads up next Monday morning. It'll probably be Thursday morning next week. And then we'll be back on schedule the week after that. But I do think there's something else too. Sorry, I should have written those down. I was happy because I was this is one of the rare times where I've actually made a Cup of Jones document well in advance. I usually put it together on Saturday or Sunday, gathering everybody's questions. But will there be a spoiler mode for Days Gone? We actually have a question coming up. Asked that. That was Megan Linhart. That was the very first business question. Will there be a spoiler mode for Days Gone? Maybe. I kind of wanted to give people time to finish that, but yeah, that might be something we can maybe do this week or next. I'll reach out to Huber because I know he's finished that. But it was such a long game. I wanted to give people time to finish it up. But there are definitely things I want to say about Days Gone that I would only be able to say in a spoiler mode. Yeah, Thursday at the same time next week. So a week from this Thursday will be the next episode of Cup of Jones. I will give you more of an update, and I'll at least post something or have something scheduled to go up Monday morning to remind everyone of that. Another thing, yeah, so basically one thing that I had in mind before E3 was to have another big, not necessarily a fundraiser, but like a big streaming event, just something out of the ordinary. We did put up our next exclusive show, at least the first episode, Achieve It Yourself. Happy about that. And we have been making improvements to the studio, but I was looking forward to, maybe doing one more special feature or some kind of special stream this month. But this is a tricky month to schedule. Another thing that's tricky is Easy Living might be during the week this year. We looked ahead at every single weekend this summer, and we're all busy. And I'm having that kid in the middle of August. And so the only weekend that's free is the weekend before, we're due. And it's just that's sketch. So, yeah, schedule for Easy Living might be weird. Easy Living might take over a Tuesday. It might be Monday to, maybe might be Tuesday to Thursday. Achieve It Yourself is on, Achieve It Yourself should be on YouTube. Sorry, Camille. We also talked about, because we were reviewing a lot of stuff audio-wise in both spaces and fixing the lights, we were trying to see if there was more stuff that we could do with audio on the main, our main show stage. And we realized that we actually did some experiments with some really nice mics. We borrowed some mics from people and tested them out. Achieve It Yourself is not out yet? Oh, sorry. We still have 5 episodes to cut. Oh, I lied. Never mind. Sorry. Achieve It Yourself is on the way. I think I got confused because I was writing our promo this weekend and I was looking at all the shows that we produce and I saw it up there. It's tricky because when you're signed into the account, yeah, you can see it on the list. Sorry. Just getting everybody excited. You know what I mean? I want you to know what it feels like to have that episode available. We will be making that first episode available for everyone. So we tested new mics and we were thinking about getting new mics. I think the mics we were looking at, if we get 6, meaning 5 for the stage and 1 for myself to actually improve the VO that I do in the booth, was around $4,000. And those are pretty good mics in total, not $4,000 per mic. And we realized that we actually need to, it would be much more cost effective and I think much more effective in general for us to improve. Yeah, it was Ian and friends that tracked this down. Just in general, our mic control. So just making sure we are always, specifically focused on our microphones when we are talking and making points during the podcast. If we want to get loud, step away from the mics, try not to like turn towards people and when we are talking. If you're Michael Huber, you're going to slam that table eventually, but, try not to hit the mic or slam the table. So that will be something that we will be, I think, exercising more and more in the future. The trick is a lot of times with professional production behavior is that a lot of times it stands almost at odds with a lot of the fun that we have in a lot of the shows that we do, and I think kind of the carefree attitude that I think is very attractive about a lot of our podcasts and streams. And so it's kind of tough to crack the whip and be like, no, talking to that microphone. Oh, thanks to everybody just in general for all of the congratulations for baby time last week. In case you missed it, I'm having a baby boy in August. August 15th is the due date. I will be out, 100% out of absolutely everything you can think of produced by Easy Allies. I'm gonna have to maybe do a special episode of Trailer Jones I'm most definitely going to have to do a special episode of Trailer Jones for the month of September, and probably August too. We'll see when I come back to do another Trailer Jones. But yeah, a lot of people, it's a lighter episode. A lot of people were just like, congrats, Jones. Lighter episode. I've been talking for half an hour already. Something happened a couple weeks ago that I wanted to bring up last week, but forgot. And we've had some questions recently about a lot of, just general inquiries about our schedule and what does a day look like typically for Easy Allies, or a week or a month. And I keep replying with what I imagine is a very unsatisfying answer if there just is no regular. I mean, even last week, I had some sort of Easy Allies commitment every single day, but, they were Monday and Tuesday were much more intense than the other days. And, whereas Saturday we had our Q&A, but I also focused on writing like the promo, whereas, Thursday was like the community showcase, and then I was on friend code. And so some days were shoot days, some days were write days, some days were, even something like, getting to play Dreams for an hour. I consider like sort of kind of work because I'm streaming that every Tuesday now, and I want to make as much progress as I can. And, but something came up. I was in a moment where we were working, and I was like, oh, this is something that I don't generally talk about a lot on Cup of Jones. And I think this is last Wednesday, Bloodworth thought he had a free day to get some errands done and ended up working until like 10 p.m. Whoops. Yeah, that's I live in fear of like these specific time, like dinner time. It's like, oh no, it's 6:30, dinner is approaching. Sophie always gets walked between like 5 and 6 p.m. and she definitely, like around 4:30, she starts staring at me and I'm like, oh man, the day is over. I'm running away with the day. But, and it was when we were approving Achieve It Yourself. So this is our new Patreon exclusive show. And so we're not only watching the first episode to, just approve that episode itself, but just kind of looking at the whole theme of the show. And, if we iron out specifically what we want this episode to be, then it'll be much easier for Ian to finish the rest of the episodes, just to make them, similar to the first. And the approval of that show took like 2 or 3 hours because Ian was working on it, and he was working on it in real time. So, Ian's out of town, but he's at his computer, and he's like, hey, if all of you are around, you can watch this. So you got primarily Bloodworth and Bossman and myself and Ian, and all, watching final episodes or final versions of these as he posts them. And so it's not only a question of actually like watching it and communicating that stuff on Slack, it's kind of like making sure you're available. So there are some times where I have planned to do something, but I know like a new script, it might come in, or like pickups for a feature that we're doing. And so if I know something's coming, that happened this weekend, I had to do voiceover for something. And so I'm going back and forth with the ally over, what changes need to be read. And there's just there's a surprising amount of Slack busy work here at Easy Allies. But again, that's like because we've functioned so long without a studio, and because so many of us live so far from each other, having this, online discourse, having this communication, being able to approve a show like this and have us, we don't need to like come together and be in a room, especially with Ian being out of town. We can still produce new content. We can still be there to supervise it. But it still took like 2 or 3 hours because we're just talking about these things, watching the episodes again. I think the episode ended up being about 8 minutes long, but you watch it a couple times, then write down some notes, and then watch a new version and write down some notes, and all of that stuff can add up. And it just doesn't. It doesn't seem like in the traditional sense what you imagine us doing. And like you see us on our shows, and you think about every show, having a little bit of time to prepare and then a little bit of time in post, and then poof, that's Easy Allies. But there's just so much more planning, and even in terms of ideas that we have that we don't do, there's hours of planning. If something doesn't come to fruition, there's hours of planning leading into that you never hear about because it's something that we either delayed or ended up not doing. So it's just lots of planning, lots of working, lots of discourse, lots of talking. There's 9 cooks in this kitchen, and there's a lot of time spent on Slack just talking it out. But I've spent 30 minutes talking it out before I even got into business questions yet. So I said this episode's going to be short. Let's try to keep it short. And we're playing World War Z tomorrow night for a group stream. Tune in, 6 p.m. Pacific time for World War Z. If all goes to plan, I think we got to give somebody that 4th code, but we should be doing 4-player World War Z. I will be one of those players. Michael Huber will be another one. I do not know who the other 2 will be. Megan Linhart, are you guys planning on doing a Days Gone spoiler mode? It's not that important. I'm just wondering if you guys are, if we are to expect it or not. Do not expect it, but we might throw one of those in. This is a very spoiler mode heavy month, so I'm not worried about hitting some kind of quota. But I do have things to say about that game. Maybe I'll do one by myself. Brandon K. Gand, with Mr. Hank currently attending to his priorities, yourself is going to be busy this fall, and in light of the sickness that temporarily wiped out the Allies post-anniversary, I'm left wondering, what is the minimum operating capacity of EZA in the event multiple allies are unable to work on EZA-related projects for whatever reason? Is there an emergency fallback plan, like we'll rely only on the podcast in X number of streams? How few allies does it take to keep things going? While this has never been needed, it's better to ask about it before finding the need for said fallback plan. Yeah, I mean, Easy Allies has always been modular. Like, one thing that's nice, one thing that can be a little stressful is that we produce lots of different shows here at Easy Allies. But one thing that's nice is we have certainly read a lot of people that are expressing their frustration over Tabletop Escapades going on hiatus for a little bit, but at the same time, we feel that we can do that because we're producing so many other things, because there are 9 of us, and because we have so many people that host different shows, that there are some shows it's going to be interesting to see, in the future, if Kyle Bosman was to take an extended vacation, what would happen to the Easy Allies podcast? What would that show be like? We've definitely had conversations about other people hosting that show or that show taking on other formats. We've done special Love and Respect focused episodes or different types of Easy Allies podcast episodes. And then, so yeah, some shows I think would just generally go away if the person wasn't able to work on it. One of the interesting things about Ian being out of town is that he produces Easy Update. Reaction shots we've been able to fill pretty effectively, and but Easy Update can be anything and everything, and so that is definitely a show that can move with him. And I'm trying to think specifically about. I think it's a case by case basis. But yeah, that's definitely a conversation that we've had before. That's kind of like the first conversation that we had at Easy Allies was, what is the minimum? What are we going to do, regardless of whether we're around or not? And I think it was the Tuesday night group stream and individual group streams, that our Twitch channel, will always be going strong no matter what is happening, no matter which allies are out. Yeah, that is definitely a conversation that is had. Like I said, the specifics pertain to each individual. Like for example, I'm going to be gone for a month, dealing with the baby at least a month. And so I'm going to have to prep Trailer Jones and all the stuff that I'm doing. Snowcone Guy, you had the meeting about E3 coverage last week, so you can tell us by now if Kyle will be theoretically available for all E3 live reactions this year. Yes, everyone but Nintendo. Cabbage Lad, I recently ordered a shirt from Fangamer to the UK. There were 2 shipping options, one for $6 customs, not included, or $29 for customs guaranteed. I took a chance, went for the cheaper option, was pleasantly surprised to not have to pay any custom charges. The quality of the shirt is fantastic, and I'm really happy with it. The reason I went with Fangamer is that you were quite frank in saying that the quality of the Spreadshirt merch was so-so. My question is, why is the merch spread across 2 stores? The quality of the shirt from Fangamer is great, so why not sell from Fangamer exclusively? The Fangamer relationship that we have right now is very special in that they worked directly with the designer of those shirts, and they have a special relationship with all of their clients in terms of, bringing that property in, pitching a design of what they want to do with the shirts, and then we're happy, and then they sell it. So while that is us lending our license to Fangamer and for them to create those shirts, those are not necessarily shirts that we conceived from the top down. Whereas when you go in Spreadshirt, that's 100% Easy Ally. So that's all the shirts that we have directly, either Kyle or Ian has, created the graphic design for and uploaded on that website. So that's basically why you get a little bit of dip in quality, is that they're like, you send us anything, almost anything, and then we will print that on a shirt and sell that to your audience. And so they kind of both fulfill their purposes of being, kind of a more high-end, exclusive, like a fun catalog to be in a sense. Like Fangamer is definitely a very high-quality product, and it's fun to to be up there with games like Hollow Knight and Undertale right there in the store. Whereas Spreadshirt kind of more facilitates the purpose of putting our brand and logo on things. How are the hooded sweatshirts? I believe the hooded sweatshirts are fine. Haven't heard any complaints about them. And I actually like the quality of the shirt. I think the shirts are cozy. It's just kind of the first one that I got is the original Easy Allies logo shirt, and that did not survive many dozens of washes. It definitely got a little beat up over time. So yeah, apologies if there's, and I believe there is a drop down menu. Correct me if I'm wrong, on the website now, right? Didn't Brent say he did that last night? Merch? Yeah, there's a drop-down menu on our website for merch, so you can see Spreadshirt and Fangamer if you go to merch on easyallies.com. Yay. Thanks, Brent. Who built our website. I'm not picky about my shirts, but I've honestly had no issues, says Daniel Bloodworth. Alexander Zirianov, last week you talked about sound quality, and I'd like to bring another thing to your attention. Different video editors render reviews with different sound levels. This may not be noticeable on its own, but it's pretty obvious when you work with two reviews back to back. Try listening to SteamWorld Quest, then Mortal Kombat 11, then Days Gone. Or just look at this waveform comparison image that Alexander posted on Patreon, sorry. And it's interesting. I'm not sure how much work it would take to create and use the same rendering template for all editors, so I'm not asking you to fix this, just letting you know. Well, there is a rendering template that we use. We all export on the same settings. That would be, I wonder if that's just, we all have different timelines. So, all the editors have different mixes in terms of, it was interesting having, seeing that waveform list and then having Days Gone be like the absolute loudest. Like I certainly just blow the hell out of my reviews when I cut them. I like things to be very loud. Yeah, again, like mic control, that's something that also kind of like you can also chalk that up to or put that in the same category as like my mic technique in terms of when I do voiceover. Like I don't get a lot of feedback from the allies on mic technique. Right now we're dealing with the actual quality of the microphone itself, not necessarily me. Like I just don't get a lot of notes. So the allies are like, oh yeah, Jones did more VO, moving on. And so yeah, I think how the uniformness of the way that we mix things, the way that certain levels are met, because all of this stuff is approved online, and we don't necessarily get to stand over a person and listen to the exact same thing that they're listening to in their headphones. Then yeah, that's maybe where you'll get that disparity. But that's really interesting, and I'm definitely I'm gonna pass that on to Ian and Don and see what they have to say about that. But thank you, Alexander. I love that. So Alexander is a YouTube whiz. Dropping subtitles all over the place. Jordan Butendike, I have to ask, we are nearly a month away from E3. Yay! How's the communication between the two rooms going? Stage and streaming, you said this is paramount for coverage. Good. It's mostly a viewing. I think right now, before we were to add anything, the control room can see the streaming room. So we could pass that along. I think I just got a mega super crazy HDMI cable in the mail that is sitting in my kitchen right now that I'm going to plug in so that, the TV monitor that's on that stage can see them as well. Yeah, it's going really good. Like I said, when I read at the top of this Cup of Jones, lots of cables, lots of really long cables. All of them have been ordered. Beaten Down Brian, when you've asked about the possibility of EZA hiring more people one day, you've mentioned that a potential position could be another editor. Given your recent wonderful announcement, this would seem even more likely if one day you wanted to step back a bit from your current production responsibilities. This reads like I'm jumping to conclusions, and I'm not. I'm just saying it would be understandable. The only thing I've wondered when this has come up is, why not Don? I'm aware of Don's current position at Funhouse, but should the need arise, would it not make a ton of sense to have him come into a more full-time position at EZA? He already knows the ins and outs of how EZA operates and seems to be happy in having a background role for the most part. Apologies if I'm underestimating Don's current EZA workload or EZA's current workload in general when it comes to editing and such, but it's just been a thought I've had every time it's come up in the past. Yeah, that's, again, totally onto Don, like Don's involvement, whether deciding to be involved in the Q&A or on the podcast. I think, a lot of that stuff is offset when you don't see a Don on camera. A lot of that stuff is offset by Don kind of being like the number one go-to editor whenever, I'm unavailable to cut something, obviously, and Ian is unavailable. Some things, like Mortal Kombat just makes sense for Don to cut. But Don, the one thing I shout out to Don is just absolutely remarkable in his willingness to participate and willingness to do just about anything in terms of ideas that we have specifically about things. We just leave a lot of the work that we do. Another question coming up about who has shows versus who doesn't. Like a lot of the stuff in terms of direct involvement at Easy Allies with ongoing shows are completely up to the people that want to work on it. And so if at any time Don wants to jump ship from Funhouse and work more full-time for EZA and take on more responsibilities, then other things will change. But Don's basically involved in as much as Don wants to be involved. And I think that's come up. The question you're asking, I think, has come up before. And Don's basically said, like, I'm good. We're like, oh, great. I think this should basically be like the short answer. Don does what Don wants. Nathan25, I used to listen to audio versions of Cup of Jones, Spoiler Modes, and other random programs through my Easy Allies early editions feed on the Podcast Republic app. However, the 15th of April Cup of Jones episode is the last item in the feed, and new episodes aren't appearing. Did you guys change something on your end, or do I need a new feed or podcast app? No, Blood has addressed this in the past, and it's just good to bring up here. Nathan25 says you don't need to mention this in the Cup of Jones, but it's always good in case people are having similar issues. Kristen actually jumped in. Thank you so much, Kristen. This is an issue with Patreon. Something happened with the original RSS feed people received in their emails. If you go into the overview page of the EZA Patreon on browser and copy the RSS feed link on the right to use in your podcast app, it should start updating again. So you, then have to go and manually do that stuff. Apologies there. But yeah, that was a little weird technical goof for any of you that are still having that. And obviously this is the place to discuss those things. Kiriboo. I have to imagine this has been asked before, but have you ever considered making a simple graphics package for when Kyle promotes the Patreon toward the end of the EZA podcast? Maybe just lead with the animated Patreon logo, followed with a brief slow scroll of the EZA Patreon homepage during his pitch. I've seen a number of creators lead with this logo animation during their Patreon plugs that Patreon provided on their rebranding. And I posted a link to the GIF of that, and it is beautiful. I think I might steal that. Also, don't just record yourself scrolling a web page like I see others do. An extension like Nimbus Capture can quickly generate a web page screenshot that you can have pan by instead. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Every time I've done that in the past, I never do a scroll. I think that's a little inelegant. I've always done a screen grab and then manually, move in Premiere. But what I will do is I'll do a screen grab, then scroll down, screen grab, then scroll down, screen grab, and then in Photoshop, I'll line up all of the images to create one big vertical thing. But Nimbus Capture doing it itself is pretty clever. And it's always fun when you do that because then it's like when you shoot movies and there are billboards in the background. It always just kind of create like timestamps something. It always, you're like, oh, that's when they shot that. Or, oh, yes, I remember when that video was up on the website. But I'll run that by Kyle. I think that's actually my sole takeaway from this episode, Kiriboo. I'll bring that up. And no, that has never been suggested. And no, I've never thought about it. Kyle Lee, I'm back with another trailer, mostly because I don't know if it would necessarily be on your radar. I hope you can check out the Bloodstained release date trailer. This might seem like a personal question, but it's not. It's fascinating because I legitimately can't think of a trailer that has done this before, and I love it. I hope you can check it out and share some thoughts. I guess I don't want to spoil it if any of you haven't seen that, but the latest trailer for Bloodstained is fascinating, and I think we're probably going to be scoring it at the end of the month. So yeah, that will definitely be in Trailer Jones, so tune in then. I know Trailer Jones just went up late last night, but that'll be in the next one. Kiraz, Is there a place to buy EZA throw pillows like the ones you have on the couch for group streams? I didn't see them on Spreadshirt or Fangamer. Do you all have plans to add more merch in the future? Yes, there will always be more merch coming to Easy Allies. We are absolutely terrible at updating that on a regular basis, but we always have hopes and dreams for more merch in the future. Those were a gift sent to us from a fan, and luckily they magically fit 2 pillows that we already had. So that's where those pillows came from. But yeah, apologies, those are not in the store. Apologies, those are not for sale. Sarah and Phil, have you and or the other allies thought about participating in something like No Shave November or other such things? No. I think a lot of us would like to see who could grow the best manly Viking dwarven over the course of the month. I don't think so. I don't think we've ever thought about doing that. Or growing a mustache or something. No, I don't think that's come up. Seems like a business question, I guess, right? Never come up, though. It would be fun to do that, but we are always getting ready for the next event, so I don't know if... Yeah, and I don't know how many allies would be into that. Red Sky, would it be possible to get a Dream Stream update episode with some of the other allies playing the early access? We've heard Kyle's thoughts so far, but I would love to hear how Ian or Don likes the creator tools so far and what they've experimented with. As far as I know, Don does not have it. Don is working on other projects right now, and Ian has been busy, and Ian is Kyle and Ian were pretty, and like myself, were pretty intimidated when we first jumped into Dreams and we saw all of the stuff that there was to do. I've committed a lot more to it because not only am I streaming it, but it just kind of worked out that way. When Days Gone was done, I had a lot more time in my schedule for games, and it kind of is... I've been, playing, another random game here and there, but that kind of is like my primary game that I'm playing right now, just to jump in and get used to stuff. And I definitely wanted to take the lead in terms of understanding it. And hopefully, this summer before I have a kid, we'll get some fun Dream streams where I'll create some stuff for the allies, or maybe we can have another stream where we go back through fun, specifically curated fun stuff that the community has created or that I've put together. But it's been tricky because, and like I said, Ian's been gone. Maybe when Ian comes back, I would love to do a check-in of early access because, they're probably going to be in early access for 5, 6, 7 months. Hopefully we get a full release of Dreams this year. Hopefully it gets in VR this year. That'd be so great. Yeah, let me just say that when Kyle and Ian both reached out to me and they were like, Dreams is great, but man, there's a lot going on in there, and it is a little bit intimidating. And hopefully I can, as I get more comfortable with using those tools and going around the menus, that I can show them how it's done and update them a little bit on how that stuff works. Crash. Okay. Yes. So yeah, hopefully get that in the future. Sorry, Blood just sent me a message. Axis. No pressure, Jones, but around the time of the last anniversary, you said something along the lines of more info on the front of retros very, very, very soon. It's been more than a month. Did something happen? Anything new to share? Nothing new to share. Nothing new happened. Had the same question last week. No updates whatsoever. Logan Taz. I've noticed Brad and Blood are the only 2 allies that don't have their own shows or podcast. I know Blood has the Blood Pact, but in terms of the main channel, they're the only 2 without, besides doing reviews or previews. Have they ever expressed any interest in having their own show? Nope. Or are they simply too busy with all their duties? Both. For whatever reason, they're good. I think Brad actually said this on the showcase. I think the last time Brad was on the showcase, somebody said, "Hey, Brad, Blood has every show," he says. Yes. Blood is everywhere. Yeah, and Brad's like, I'm good. It's just not necessarily Brad's forte. The other thing, too, talking about Don picking up edits, Brad is picking up a lot of great, almost every game that Brad has reviewed lately has been just some really fascinating indie game or some game that would be very easy for us, focused on only the biggest projects that come out every year, to miss. And so I'm kind of like adoring Brad for picking up a lot of that slack here at Easy Allies. So there you go. Junk Tagawa. I noticed on the bottom of the EZA homepage that it says you guys are sponsored by Uniqlo. When did that happen? UNIQLO. That is our sponsor one of our sponsors for the month of May. We haven't shot an Easy Allies podcast yet in May, and so that's why you haven't heard that in the podcast. But when those payments go through at the end of or the beginning of every month, then we know who those sponsors are. Then we can put those on the page. So there you go. Sharp eye from Junk Tagawa, picking up those new sponsors. Amir Hosni, any chance that Kyle Huber and yourself could shoot a spoiler mode for Barry? I started watching it recently. It's great, and I think it would make a very good spoiler discussions. I knew for a while that Kyle and Huber were both into the show, but only recently during the showcase I found out that you did as well, and Amanda would probably love to be on Barry. Can you give your take, possibly a spicy take on the show, what you liked, didn't like, etc.? So yeah, this was a spoiler mode request. I will just say I really like it. I think it's a fantastic show. I think it's a very interesting mix of, it's interesting. You'd say comedy and drama. It's almost comedy and horror. There are some very horrific, horrible things that happen on Barry, but it's always kind of presented in kind of a Joss Whedon-esque, shocking sense, but it never gets too shocking. It's an interesting blend of two different worlds. It's a show that kind of makes you forget about all the stuff that you've seen and experienced. It's a very fascinating tone, that show, and it's gonna be interesting to see, man, how long they drag stuff out, like Breaking Bad, but a comedy. It's like, ugh. It's an interesting ride, that Barry. Dwy guy. And yeah, we'll see. I don't know when this season's going to end. It might be around E3 time, so I don't know if we'll have time to do it, but I will throw that out there. Dwy guy, I was wondering if you have ways of tracking metrics for your audio podcast. I primarily consume EZA through the Patreon RSS feed, and it's incredibly convenient. Thank you for throwing some one-offs, spoiler modes, Game of Thrones discussions, etc. on there. Do you have a good way to know how many times each podcast has been downloaded or listened to? I think it'd be a good way to also inform advertised sponsor to your patrons of their reach. It'd be interested in seeing, or at least hearing, a bit of chatter about a stats breakdown, like what podcasts are averaging, which are more or less popular, etc. Yes, we have that. That is more something that each individual, that is not something that I track for Trailer Jones. My reach on Trailer Jones does not have sponsors, is not going to change what I do episode to episode. So that is not metrics. We can see SoundCloud's is Bloodworth, but I think the Patreon RSS isn't easy to track. I have spoken with Michael Damiani regarding Friend Code, Ben regarding Frame Trap, and Kyle regarding the Easy Allies podcast before on the reach of all aspects of that podcast. But it is really up to each individual producer to be monitoring that stuff and then make decisions on the podcast accordingly. I don't know how much we would divert our regular schedule and production plans in terms of to certainly that is something that obviously sponsors information that they want to get, but I don't know how much, again, we would change up what we're doing depending on one podcast getting not enough traffic over another podcast. So much of what we do, so much of our schedule is in direct service of our patrons, of people that give us money to do specific shows. And so Blood says the Frame Trap with Max did really well, which is not a surprise. Double the normal views, so thank you, Max, for that. If you haven't checked it out, Maximilian Dude on the last episode of Frame Trap. And that's it for business questions. But there we go. Ben and I should have babies more often. Everybody's really focused on, hey, I was going to ask a question, but I think I'll just congratulate you on the baby and we'll move on. And almost as many. Oh, we have baby questions too, which I have put at the end of personal questions, specifically separating those baby questions. But yeah, I'm not even an hour. We're done. We're done with business. There we go. Chill business segment. I know. Yeah. Hey. I mean, maybe you might have some questions based on the equipment that we just got. And apologies if, updates from Easy Allies in terms of production are a little light because, again, Ian went back out of town and a lot of the stuff we're waiting to build and set up until the week before E3. But it's nice. And I echoed this last week, and I just want to say again, it's a really good feeling to be ready for E3. And this also actually, I will end on this business note, because I've been thinking in terms a lot about growth, about growing the Patreon. Our YouTube numbers, we're at 211,000 subscribers on YouTube right now, so our YouTube numbers are going up in a pleasant way. But our Patreon definitely has kind of hovered. We're at the beginning of a new month. We're still above 50K, but we at one point hit 52K. It'd be nice to get back up there again. And I've been thinking about growth in terms of big things we can do. I'm working on our promos right now for E3 and for Patreon. I think that'll help us, show off this, new studio, obviously, that we're using. But when it comes to E3 and Easy Living and, our fall review season and game of the year. Like, there's so many events that are already dialed in. Hall of Greats, that a lot of us, prepped for, some more than others in terms of their presentations. That it is very difficult to not only to schedule something with all the allies. Like, it was kind of a challenge to schedule this last May meeting that we had, given that everyone was going to see Avengers this weekend. It seems like every vacation that people have planned for the summer, along with my month-long, potentially more vacation planned, to take care of a newborn child, is not working together. Like, we've been able to easily schedule Easy Live in the last couple of years, and this year is very tricky. So I'm looking ahead at the next couple months and thinking, like, how can we get substantial growth? How can I communicate that growth to patrons? Because I'm actually very excited about where Easy Allies is at, where Easy Allies is going. But I know it can be frustrating to see us move into the studio and we are repeating and improving a lot of the things that we've done previously. But aside from our exclusive show, and a couple of the fun streams that we've done in there. And, we've added things like It's Easy to Like Anime. We were doing our Game of Thrones, reactions, but I would like to see us doing more experimental weird stuff in that studio. And I wanted to address kind of what the next couple months look like in terms of finances, because what I want to communicate that in lieu of seeing, this like dramatic growth on Patreon, or in lieu of seeing anything, really exciting and enticing, like a Box Peak Season 2 or something, to reach outside. Obviously, E3 is going to come up and do very well for us, traffic-wise and exposure-wise. But one of the things that's really exciting is every single month now, with all of us making a reasonably, comfortable salary. All of us are doing okay in terms of, how that money is split 9 ways every single month. But we are doing a pretty good job of saving money, and we're doing a really good job of, allocating enough money every single month to improve whatever needs to be improved, whether we need to buy new equipment, whether we need to buy new furniture like we have for the studio, whether we need to the ideas possibly come up about whether, we could, maybe bring in other bodies during E3, people to help us out with production. Not necessarily saying we're going to do that, but just the idea that we're talking about that. And that's not something like, okay, we got to start saving up now, but like, we already have the money set aside to do it. And so there are lots of things that we could spend money on for Easy Allies, lots of stuff that we can improve. And it's just nice to know that we do have a little bit of money set aside every month to do that. And so while there might not be any huge announcements from Easy Allies in the next couple of months in terms of features, in terms of big events, purely because scheduling is just very tricky over the next couple of months, because it seems like all the allies are to get all of us together to do something, because it seems like we're all kind of jumping around in different directions right now. Just personally, has nothing to do with business. But at the same time, it's nice to know that every single month I will be able to come back and report. E3 is basically going to be the answer to that question this month and next, but it's nice to know that we cut corners a little bit with the place we got Easy Livin' last year. The place we get Easy Livin' this year, we can definitely up the budget of Easy Livin' of that weekend, get air conditioning. I'll be a lot more comfortable. And so financially, business-wise, this is just a different company than it was a year ago before we were in that studio. And we are now paying rent on that studio. So that's a further expense that we didn't even have a year ago. And so it just felt like Easy Allies at one point was, we always knew what those big financial goals were. We always knew the stuff that we were going to spend money on, and we were always just so close to doing it. And it was very gratifying when we did it, or if we did a fundraiser and people were able to, assist us financially to get to those goals. And it's nice to know now that even though we do have a giant list of stuff that we want to get, we can kind of theme those things month by month. And I think as we move into past E3, which will be really fun because we're getting a lot of new equipment for that, we're looking at months like July and August and September, where kind of not necessarily sky's the limit in terms of like we can just go somewhere and do a supermarket sweep, but we can kind of isolate one, problem area, trouble area of Easy Allies, someplace where improvement would be noticeable by our community, noticeable by our patrons, noticeable by people in terms of kind of that are on the fence of whether they want to invest in Easy Allies or not. And we can make it happen. So it seemed a bit rambly, but basically what I mean is thank you for your support, allies. You have put us in a very I want to say comfortable, because this job is exhausting, but you've put us in a place where we do have the freedom to improve some interesting stuff month to month. And so hopefully I will be able to communicate that in the future, because Right now, I'm just writing a promo. And that it doesn't cost anything to write a promo unless I pay somebody else to do it for me. I'm going to take a long sip. One of my last sips for my smoothie, and we'll get into personal questions. Cheers. All right. Alex Pisa with our first personal question. In movies, what's something that must be there? For me, it's good camera placement, especially in combat. Acting. Yeah, you gotta have good acting. And I know that's something that seems like, yeah, no, it's not really an answer I'm looking for, Jones. It's kind of something more specific than that. But man, I'm out. It's like the first thing you can tell. I've seen some movies that had really bad production values, really bad sound, really bad lighting, really bad camera, really bad costumes, all shot in somebody's living room that clearly like was not set decorated, but really good acting. And I think that can go a long way. And I think it's especially something as I've left film school and seen a lot of my friends, some of them moving on to documentary features, some of them moving on to, television, and some of them producing independent film, some of them, kind of like latching themselves onto directors of certain companies and then, producing several films with them, and seeing what really matters at the end of the day. And it's interesting. At the showcase was unfortunately a video that we couldn't show, but somebody did a montage of Breaking Bad. And it's interesting to think of some of the more recent shows that you love, but forget that, like, oh yeah, that show started before like HD TVs were really a thing. And like, yeah, not saying Breaking Bad did, but interesting to go back and even see stuff like X-Files that like some of the special effects are like a little bit dated, and like, oh yeah, like there's some TV shows that just don't look as good as they would like to be. But man, if you got good acting, it doesn't matter. If you have really solid performances, and to me, that is one of the biggest things. And with horror, I'm a big horror fan. But I also kind of have a love-hate relationship with the horror genre because I love a good horror film, but it's not often that I see a good horror film. I'll tell you, so many horror films are just really, really bad. And it's a bummer because I think when you look at comedy, when you look at drama, when you look at action, you look at like true to life, films or there's just so many different genres that like there's the cream of the crop, the best, and then all of the other weird stuff. And the cream of the crop in horror is just the thinnest cream, man. I mean, it is just like on the surface. Maybe we'll get like 2 or 3 horror films like a year that I think aren't like completely awful. And I feel bad too, because Huber and I definitely disagree a lot when it comes to horror. But one movie that we definitely disagree is oh god, I'm trying to think. I believe it's a James Wan special. It's the one that The Conjuring The Conjuring had 1 and 2, right? And that was with like the brother sister, where they're like the detective team. And I just didn't believe them at all. Hereditary was amazing. Yeah, Hereditary's great. But to me, it was the acting is kind of what really, and it wasn't like there were just bad performances. It was just kind of like how realistic everything seemed, and how the actors were kind of being placed in really uncomfortably weird situations where it's like, wow, if this is not a comedy, this is a big request for me to believe that all of this is happening and that these people are actually doing these things. Yeah, it's rough. Obviously, it depends on what, sometimes if you want to do something like extremely crazy visuals, then like, yeah, you can just cast models and not worry about it. But for me, if you don't have good acting, it's rough. And Mark Dalga brings up an interesting point. The fact that Kit Harington, Emilia Clarke, and Sophie Turner are all terrible actors in anything I've seen outside of Game of Thrones makes me think you can get away with just okay actors. I think Sophie Turner is actually doing the best job this season. Kit Harington had a speech in last night's episode that I was not moved at all, because he's not, maybe that's the point. I don't know, because all the kids are so young on that show, or supposed to be. But gotta have good acting. That's why I had a lot of issues with Us, the movie Us, the Jordan Peele's Us. We never did a spoiler mode on that, and Us was a weird movie. There were a lot of things I didn't like about that, but acting, so good. All the performances were so dynamite that it carried me through a lot of instances in that film that were so bizarre. So yeah, again, you gotta have good acting, gotta do it. That's why I hate people hired in musicals that can't sing, or movies with a lot of dancing that can't dance, and it's just like, get the best people always. Dwayne L. Amanda mentioned a meditation app for whatever reason. I never thought about an app. Any issues with sharing what that app is and what exactly does it do? Amanda, sorry, you might be listening to this. Maybe she'll jump in and chat. Basically, what that app does is it offers guided meditations. And so if there's a specific type of, you're like, oh, I want to meditate for 2 minutes about my job, or I want to meditate for 5 minutes about health or fitness, or I want to meditate for 10 minutes just about mental well-being and forgiving people. Then it's like, oh, we have a forgiveness, meditation. And then someone will talk you through it and time out everything. Another thing that a meditation app might do is just track as many times as you've done it. So one of the things that helps, as much as I talk about meditation, and I think as much as I try to pass myself off as somebody who knows a bit about meditation, I forget to do it all the time. And so it might be nice to have an app that every now and then is like, hey, you haven't meditated in 2 weeks. Maybe you should do that. I don't know what that app is called. Sorry. But I will ask Amanda, maybe have that on a future episode of Cup of Jones. But saw this last night, and I was like, oh, gosh, I don't know. Amanda was asleep. And when I saw her this morning before I did Cup of Jones, I forgot to ask. Steven Sell, were you able to score a reservation for Galaxy's Edge? Yes. So stoked. I don't want to say the day because I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know. It's going to be a madhouse. So I will come back from that and I'll talk about it on Cup of Jones or on the podcast or something. But I did get one. So that was, and a huge shout out to Amanda. Amanda was actually way more on top of that than I was. And so 'twas Amanda that actually pressed the button and booked it. Yeah, we were on that and rolled the dice and got it. And I'm terrified because it's like, not only is it this day, it's this specific time. It's like, oh no, it's going to be miserable. Like my expectations are so low for that. The main ride's not going to be open. I don't know if we'll get onto the Falcon ride. If I can get in there and like see the Falcon and maybe get a drink, that's it. That's like as high as my expectations get. When is your next Disney outing? It'll be before E3. Would you consider doing an Allies Disney meetup, or are you way too impacted with E3 it'd be nice to go to that Friday after E3, that Friday that we're going to be hanging out with guests and talking about stuff that we missed during E3. Man, sorry, I got to blow my nose. I got something in my nose. You just get like a piece of lint or something. Just feels like something's floating around your nose. You're just like, all right, enough. Yeah, I've done like Disney specific ally meetups at Disneyland before, and we get like a handful of people. It might be nice one day to like plan a Disney event and then like advertise it for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Like an Easy Living kind of thing where it's like at the same time every single year. Right now that's not in the budget. Might be fun to do that in the future. How much is Disneyland nowadays? Like $160 or something to get into both parks. Yeah, way more than $100. That's for sure. Yeah, so it's tough. Like I got my regulars, I do shout out to Rick and Rogabo. Like I definitely have people that meet up at, if I'm just impromptu, I'm going to head to Disneyland, they're probably going to be there. But as far as like a big group, I don't know how many people. I think like 3 is the maximum the people I've ever got to like meet me at Disneyland and go hang out. Maybe, yeah, we just need to plan those things far enough in advance. But I mean, twist my arm. I would love to do that. It's just something that I would essentially be using company money to go to Disneyland. And like, I don't know if that's something like in our budget just yet. But Jones, please update us if Kyle has meditated since the community showcase. I would bet no, but we are in personal questions. Yeah, I would bet no. But we'll see. I'll ask him. As Bo Zapruder, I was going to use this week to ask you about some of the Disney Broadway productions that have popped up recently, but in the interest of keeping the good vibes going, get it? You see what happened there? I've decided to go with a few Jolly selections instead. Yeah, I haven't seen anything Disney related on Broadway. I think Lion King is the only musical that Disney has put on Broadway that I have seen. I didn't see Little Mermaid. I haven't seen Aladdin. I haven't seen, I don't even know. Mary Poppins was on Broadway for a while. I haven't seen any of that stuff. So that would be a very short conversation. But I do know a little bit about some of these. On the Town, She Loves Me, and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. All right, so quick little musical theater talk. I've heard, I think, a track or two that people have performed at various reviews or auditions in the past from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And like, if I close my eyes, I can like visualize it, you know, like the blue wall in the background and everybody in their shirts. And like, there's like Snoopy, and isn't Snoopy just wears like a white shirt, right? Like Snoopy's just like another actor. It's kind of like Godspell in a weird way. Like, and that was like in the 70s or something, right? I remember seeing photographs of like really old productions of that, like when I was in the 80s, just getting to know musicals. But that's about it. I don't know a lot about You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. I don't know the plot. I just know that it has a couple of good songs that like I've heard in other places, but I could not tell you the names of any of those. On the Town, I know a little bit more because my brother was in On the Town. That was when my brother was a sophomore in high school. And so when he was doing it, he wanted to watch the movie. And so we watched the movie with Frank Sinatra and other people. I don't know if I know any of the other actors. They have Beetlejuice on Broadway now, man. Yeah, there's a Charlie Brown musical, but it's very, very old. But yeah, New York's a hell of a town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people ride through a hole in the ground. New York, it's a hell of a town. It's like, it's about three sailors that just go to New York and want to do what sailors do in New York. It's a very, very silly show. It's one of those, you had the purse. I thought you had the purse. It's like, there's a lot of goofiness. But what's really fun is it's one of those kind of showpiece shows. So even if it's not like a Follies or a Mame or a Gypsy, like it kind of has those, now they meet this character and now this character has their number, you know, that like talks about, I remember one of the fun ones is one of the guys falls in love with the cabbie, and the cabbie just knows a lot about New York. And so there's a fun number of the cabbie driving him around and he wants to see things, but she's telling him they're going to go someplace else. And so it's a great, fun introductions to characters, and but it's not, when you're done with it, you haven't like arrived anywhere emotionally. It's just kind of like, it's like, Annie's a little bit more emotional than that, but it's a goofy fun show. It's a good show for high schools to do, because there's a minimal amount of dancing, but you know, fun costumes. And if you're in the chorus of a show, and I know a lot of you have never been, but you need people in the background. So when you go see a musical, when you go see something on stage, you know, there are 20 to 30 people that, you know, they're lucky if they have a line, but they're just always there. They're always in the background. They're always doing something. And one way you can make it really fun for those people, and even though those people don't get to shine as much as the stars do, if I get to like constantly change costumes. I remember when we did Pirates of Penzance in high school, you know, I wasn't a lead. I actually ended up understudying for the police sergeant, but just being a pirate was so much fun because we were given so much freedom to goof around and to add choreography and to add stage direction and think up our own little funny jokes that we could do on stage, you know, fun things we could do physically, because it is a very like physically comedic show. And On the Town is kind of like that. It's kind of like Guys and Dolls, where you're going to Havana, you're going with the gangsters, you're moving all over the place. So I imagine On the Town can be a fun show for people just with bit parts. She Loves Me, our final musical that we will talk about, I did She Loves Me in college. I was Stephen Kodai, I believe Stephen's his first name. And this was probably the most disappointed I've ever been in casting in my entire life. I think we put on a good production. I'm never going to say that I'm right and the director is wrong, because if I'm not the person casting a show that I'm auditioning for, I have absolutely nothing to say in terms of like what the correct casting was going to be. But if you've seen You've Got Mail, that is a modern telling of the story of She Loves Me, which is... Oh man, the post office on the corner. What's the original, the perfumery? What the heck is it called? There's a movie, there's a play, and then they made a movie out of it, and then they wrote the musical She Loves Me based on the movie or something, or based on the play. It's something on the corner or something. The guy who lived on the corner, and we wrote letters to each other and didn't know it was them. I can't remember what it's called, but like, basically, there are two people that are pen pals that like each other. The Shop Around the Corner. Okay, so according to Screaming Argonaut, it's called The Shop Around the Corner. Several people have guessed that now. And it's basically about two people that don't like each other in real life, but they love each other and they're pen pals. Aw. And so She Loves Me is this number that the George, the main character, sings, where he basically is like, oh, she loves me. You know, he's like, oh, I thought this woman hated me, but it turns out this woman is the woman that I've been pen pals with. And so you like know the ending of the play, but She Loves Me takes place in a perfumery in Turkey, I think. And it's adorable. It's a really, really cute show. I think it's a show that does actually age well. I think they just put on a recent production. I think Zach Levi was in She Loves Me, if I'm not wrong, a couple years back. But I thought I had George in the bag. I knew they were going to do that production coming up, and I listened to that. I must have listened to that score like a billion times and memorized every song that George sang. It came in, and I thought I did Dynamite audition, and I got the villain. And I was like, ah! And I wanted to be the guy who sang She Loves Me. It's a really cool song. It's just an adorable show, and but I ended up being the bad guy. And the thing that's fun was fun about the bad guy is I sang a song. I got to sing a song that was basically like me, flipping the bird to everybody in the cast. So George gets accused of something that I did, that Kodai did. I think it's like sleeping with the boss's wife. And then everybody finds out, okay, it wasn't George, and George is rehired, and then they fire me. And so this is like my exit of the show. So I get to like walk out and be, it's been grand knowing you, grand being your friend. And so that was very fun. Kodai, and get to like, wave my hat and walk off and say screw you to everybody that I'd worked with. That was a fun show. I don't think I had as much fun as I would have if I was George. And I don't know if I'll ever get another chance to play that character. It's a very fun role. Maybe I might be. I guess I can still maybe do it. I got a couple years left in me. Maybe when I hit 50, it'll be definitely too late. But cute show. Fun little anecdote about when I did She Loves Me. I forgot my jacket one time. I just walked on stage without my jacket. No big deal. I wasn't like a big featured person, and I was still in a suit. I was in like a nice shirt and a tie. But I just forgot to put my jacket on. And the lights came up, and right as the lights came up, I was like, shit, I don't have my jacket. And in the scene, I was supposed to be talking with a customer, and I was standing by, and I was holding a bottle in my hand and showing it, and we're just kind of, the scene is not focused on us, we're not mic'd, and so we're just kind of slowly, speaking in hushed tones. And the actress that I was across was like, where's your jacket? And I was like, I forgot it. She's like, how'd you forget your jacket? And I'm like, I don't know. So we're just, off in the corner, not the focus of the scene whatsoever, talking about why the hell I forgot my jacket. Even where'd you foss? Where'd you foss? Even where'd you foss? Oh, even D where'd you foss? Supposedly is the way you pronounce it. Thank you so much for including that. I need to make just some gigantic Cup of Jones pronunciation thing and then just add them every time. So I had a document before on my laptop, but I'm using my PC mostly now. And so I made a Google Doc, and I'll be putting more pronunciations in there, and hopefully we'll never make that mistake again. What do you think of studios and companies spoiling their own material? After nearly a week now, I have not seen a single spoiler for Endgame, but on Monday, before the Game of Thrones episode The Long Night had a chance to air globally, the HBO Instagram account posted an image of the last scene of the whole battle, spoiling it for pretty much everyone outside of the US. I know individuals will post spoilers, it happens, but for the company itself to spoil something like that just seems completely irresponsible to me. It was interesting. Cue helicopter. It was interesting seeing Disney and Marvel and the Russo brothers like insistence, like don't spoil the end game, like putting that into multiple trailers and really pushing that hashtag and then on Good Morning America, like I think it wasn't the Monday after, it was the Monday after the second weekend. They were like, okay, time to spoil it, and they dropped the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer and so I think it's like 2 weeks. As far as Disney's concerned, it's 2 weeks. That's how much time you have, like a week and a half, basically. But yeah, doing it the night of is absolutely terrible. Especially like on those official channels. Kind of makes me not want to not follow those official channels. But I can understand, especially with like appointment viewing, especially when you're on like a television show week to week. You kind of want to live tweet it. You kind of want to be like, whoa, did you see that thing that happened? Aren't you sad that you're not in this zeitgeist, that you're missing that crazy thing that just happened with Game of Thrones? So I can understand the desperation, but like I would never want that to happen if I was doing a show on HBO or if I was. I'm sure I would have so much power to make those changes, but Outlander live tweets a whole bunch of gifs from every episode. At least I've read those books. Yeah. And I think it's just desperation. I think they want to just absolutely own social media. So it's tough when you've kind of, it's like having like, nuclear weaponry. Like when you've built up something that could be potentially that huge and that effective, it's like if you don't maximize it, if you don't take advantage of it, if you don't drop it at the right time. So I could see people being like, unless we spoil this won't be a big thing. So unless people see how episode 3 ended in that big shocking moment, it's not really gonna have the effect. Everyone's just gonna be quiet about it, and then nobody's really like talking about Game of Thrones. I often wonder also like how Facebook and Twitter handle that stuff. If there's, what kind of deals it looks like between HBO and those social media platforms to be like, I don't care what you make a story about, just make a story, just something about us. And obviously it was like, I think Twitter had like a whole Avengers like department. There was like it was almost its own button, like on that day of just like, and now here's all this Avengers, stuff. And I was actually, most of it was clearly labeled spoiler or non-spoiler. Ian Alexander, just wondering how your JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has been going. I think you mentioned it was on a streaming service you use now. Did you finish part 3 yet? Any comments on what you've watched since that Easy Anime episode? I've been so lazy with JoJo. I rewatched seasons 1 and 2 with kind of half watching it, and I watched it with subtitles, and so I got to hear that, beautiful original voice acting. So I did get a refresher on seasons 1 and 2. I do have those fresh in my head, but I have not jumped into season 3 yet. One thing that should not slow me down, because I can just crack open my Xbox, but my Blu-ray player on my PS4 started freaking out. Twitter's trending topics were full of spoilers for like 12 hours for last night's Game of Thrones. Nice. So yeah, that was one thing that I had JoJo like locked and loaded, ready to watch. And then it was like, and again, I could just, plug in my Xbox and turn that on. But it's tough because I want to be focused on it. And honestly, like when I have like sit down focused viewing, it's like Barry or Last Week Tonight or Game of Thrones or Baking Show with Amanda. Or Star Trek. We're watching Star Trek Discovery, which is pretty good this season. It needs to. I'm looking forward to a mellow Star Trek Discovery episode. It's like every episode of Star Trek Discovery is like, oh my god, it's like this is too much, man. I can't take it. But I just need to make appointment viewing to just sit down and just like drill through part 3. Sorry. Keep reminding me, Ian. Keep reminding me. Josh Burcham, you mentioned in the last episode that you thought Disney Infinity was going to be really bad before you knew all the details. Are there any other games that you like now but were very down upon before release? I mean, Dreams, I didn't really get for a long time. It sounded interesting, but certainly like at the premiere of Dreams when they just had the weird little puppets dancing, I was like, what the hell is this? Good question. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything at the time, and I can't think of anything right now. I'm sorry, Josh. Disney Infinity definitely was kind of its own beast. And I don't know what it is about my brain, but I get so distracted whenever a helicopter's like flying overhead. Because I always wonder, it's like when I hear conversations when I'm out and about, and I know I shouldn't be eavesdropping, but like I can't help it. Like I can't not stop hearing your conversation. And then I just wonder, like, did that person ever get that puppy that they wanted to buy? Or like, did they help their, grandmother, immigrate from Russia? Did that happen? Like I want to know. And so I just got to wonder, like, why are they in that helicopter? Why are they circling around? Are they looking for someone? What do they do when they find them? Who are they looking for? How long have they been looking for them? You got to wonder. I can think of like the opposite, where I can think of games where I was really excited about, and a lot of people were kind of like, didn't think they would be good. I remember people thought Horizon Zero Dawn was weird for a long time, but I was always like very, very excited about that. I didn't think Red Dead Redemption was going to be bad, the original Red Dead Redemption, but I didn't know about it. Like when the first trailers dropped for Red Dead Redemption, I was like, what's this? I did not know. Maybe it's it's not a traffic chopper. This is definitely, if it was a traffic chopper, that'd be up there every single day. Mario Rabbids. Yeah, I never really play Mario Rabbids though. But that's a good example from chat. Okay, sorry. Bye, Casper. Casper's taken off. Glenn Fordham. Just finished watching Hall of Greats, and I could see the other allies having a hard time believing GoldenEye is still an enjoyable game to this day. Have you heard of the Ultra HDMI? It's a mod for the original N64s that allows it to put an HDMI signal to a modern TV, which is sourced directly from the graphics chip, making it crystal clear, not like the usual composite to HDMI adapters available. It's the kind of mod that people see and think, this is how I remember the N64. Instead of the washed out mess, you're getting plugging AV directly into a modern flat panel. It won't help the frame rate, but it may still help the sell. You should definitely check it out. Pre-modded consoles are out there, but pricey. I've heard about this. I have not checked it out. That might be something fun to invest in the future. Yeah, spoilers, I brought GoldenEye 007 to the Hall of Greats last time. It did not do well. I was very surprised. Horizon Zero Dawn, D-O-N, from Blood. I love that. Horizon Zero Dawn. Imagine that. Zero Dawn. Yeah. The truly scary apocalypse. Yeah, I gotta admit, I was shocked. I was shocked it got no votes. I was shocked it got no votes when I brought it. I was not shocked it got no votes with that lineup. That was a powerhouse lineup. A lot of people brought some really, really good games. So if I hadn't brought GoldenEye 007 and somebody else brought it, I probably wouldn't have voted for it. I probably would have been like, no, these other three games, man, are just too good. I'm excited to get all that Nintendo out of there. I'm excited to have Damiani just start losing continually because he's like, oh, there's no more Zelda games. It's like, oh, you ran out of Zelda games, Damiani. Oh, you can do another Mario game. Oh, you ran out of Mario games. I guess there's no more good games, right, Damiani? And Damiani's like, oh, he's got to start bringing like, FTL. It's like, no, you got to do better than that. But it's just, now it's just like, all right, yeah, that's Mario's. Pretty popular, but it's surprising to me to kind of forget GoldenEye, to be like, no, that's from a time and place where we don't talk about the 90s anymore. We don't talk about the frame rate on the N64. It's like Ocarina of Time had a bad frame rate, but that's okay. But then like all games had a horrible frame rate on the N64. It's gonna be interesting to combat that. I got a year now to rethink GoldenEye 007. I'm not saying there's not a promise that I'm going to bring GoldenEye 007 back in a year's time, but I was thinking about making a video, but I wasn't sure how to capture. I didn't want to like borrow equipment from people last minute to capture footage from GoldenEye and to put a video together. But I'm going to have to, third time's a charm, hopefully, for GoldenEye. That'll be my third time bringing it. And it was neat. It was neat to bring you back this second time because it was one of the first times I really listened to what people said the last time and tried to address those concerns. And then it seemed like frame rate. All Huber had to just be was like frame rate, mic drop, and like, all right, I got to combat the frame rate. Okay. All right. James Vest. I have 3 more movies for Does It Hold Up or Not? I get to talk about 3 musicals and 3 weird movies. 3 weird old movies. If you have not seen any, that is fine. I have seen all of these films multiple times, so I'm very much looking forward to talking about them. But do these movies hold up? They are all 80s sci-fi movies. The Last Starfighter, Star Trek 4, and War Games. Oh no! I looked up Star Trek 6. You wrote down Star Trek 4, and I looked up Star Trek 6. Star Trek 4 is my favorite Star Trek. That's my favorite. My favorite Next Generation film is First Contact. My favorite of the old series, my favorite Star Trek movie is 4. I love 4 so much. 4 is Journey Home, if I'm not mistaken. I looked up a Voyage Home. I thought it was a Journey Home. The Voyage Home. Okay. Star Trek 6 is Undiscovered Country. Star Trek 6 is, it's okay. One thing that I forgot about Star Trek 6, I think Amazon got like all the Star Trek movies like last year, and I went through all of them. Even like the first one. I was like, wow, I haven't watched the first Star Trek movie in a long time. The first Star Trek movie is fascinating. But 4 is just so good. 4 is just 4 has probably my favorite Shatner scene in all of Star Trek, and when he takes her out to dinner, and she's like, she's like, let me guess, you're from outer space? No, but I work there. And then she goes to pay at the end. She's like, let me guess, they don't have money in space? He's like, oh, well, they don't. I mean, it's a known thing. I'm sorry, but they don't. We don't have money. And he's so good. And it's just nuclear vessels. Like it's the way they handle humor in that movie is so good, and the way I mean, time travel is always a scary thing to do, and yeah, I'm sure you can nitpick, any time travel movie. I'm sure there's some mistakes. It is a little silly that they goof around in the past and then come back to like the same future. Like, okay, but I love where 4 kind of fits into everything too. Like the Enterprise is gone. Spoilers. They lose the Enterprise at the end of 3, and so they're on, because it's 3 is the search for Spock, and they get Spock back, but it's this weird Spock, and like Kirk and Spock haven't really. That's what was interesting a year or two ago when I rewatched it, because I had seen 4 and I love 4, but it was the first time I'd seen 4 after watching 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and I was like, oh, I forgot Spock's like weird. I forgot like this is like a new Spock, and Kirk and Spock like haven't really had that time together. So when you have these Spock being very unusual and very bold and hard to communicate with, in 4, it just like it just adds up to the comedy, and I think he and the blonde gal in that movie has such, the mom from Seventh Heaven, like have such an interesting chemistry and such an interesting arc, their story. And I love how it's like redemption for them, all these horrible things that they did in Star Trek 3, just disobeying orders all over the place. And it's fun. It's its own little slice, but at the same time, it really directly continues all the crazy stuff that happened. Star Trek 1 is kind of on its own. It's really 2, 3, 4 that have this really interesting connection. They're in a Klingon bird of prey the whole time. War games. So it holds up in that way. It's very 80s, but it definitely does hold up. War games holds up as a concept. Didn't they make War Games again? They made like a War Games video game or something. I think it's interesting you bring up Last Starfighter and War Games, because these are both movies that have been on the remake, shelf for forever. Like people have talked about that. Gary Whitta, I think, is like deeply involved in a Last Starfighter, some kind of Last Starfighter reboot. War Games is a fascinating concept about this kid who hacks into a government AI, very young Matthew Broderick, and Ali Sheedy is, I think, his girlfriend in that, or the gal that helps him out. He hacks into I don't remember the name of it, like Norman or something. What's the name of Joshua? Hacks into this AI that was built to play war games and for people to, practice thermonuclear war and war tactics. And it starts playing a game with Matthew Broderick, and the government doesn't know it did that. And so the government thinks this thing has taken over its nuclear capabilities and is about to launch a nuclear war. And so it's a fascinating look. I always remember the scene where he like finds a quarter or something and then like makes a free phone call, and I'm like, what did he just do? Or like a piece of metal or something. He like holds it to a thing on the phone and he gets to make a free phone call. But it's neat. It has its moments, but it's so 80s. Like, I think music wise and technology wise, I think it's a story that we might have moved past, which is why why not? Shouldn't we just play a game of chess? But it's why I think like the themes are still relevant. Just kind of soundtrack wise, attitude wise, world wise, it's just a different world. So I think it holds up the least out of all of these. Last Starfighter, baby. Now we're talking. So I think Star Trek 4 holds up the most. I would put Last Starfighter underneath that, and then War Games beneath that. But let's talk about Last Starfighter for a second. Okay? Have we talked about Last Starfighter? Like, do all of you know how obsessed I am with Last Starfighter? I wrote a Last Starfighter sequel. Like, I have a Last Starfighter sequel locked and loaded. One of our close friends, Amanda and I's close friends, is God, no, I can't remember his name as much as I say I love that movie. Alex is the guy from Last Starfighter. And so I've kind of sideways pitched it at him, like I've talked to like our friend and just like, would he be interested? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I don't know if they would bring him back. Alex Hunter, is that his name? God, Last Starfighter, what I would love to do is I would love to do a sequel to Last Starfighter. A lot of people are talking about, doing a remake. I would love to do a sequel. I would love to continue the story. I think it makes so much sense because the original game was about arcade games. Like that was video games at the time. It was, what if these arcade cabinets were sent throughout the world to train potential pilots, and then one of them gets picked up on Earth because they're part of like some, this assassination plot, and then they just happen to get caught up in this giant war and end up being one of the last, forces against this big armada. And but because it was about arcade games, because it was about like specifically an arcade cabinet, I just think about the advancements that we've made in video games ever since then. 40 years later, it's interesting to think of where games is at now online, and if you were to release a Starfighter game that was to train people, you could have like tournaments and leaderboards, and it would be much easier to try to find the best Starfighters in the world if you were to say, wink wink, recruit a legion of Earth pilots to help defend the universe. And it's also fun to think of Last Starfighter in terms of like the primary directive, or like the first rule, I don't know what they call it in Star Trek, where it's like you don't want to mess with civilizations that aren't ready for learning about the Federation, learning about is there more going on outside in the universe. And so it's fun to think of Last Starfighter that way, that they kind of don't think much of humans. They're like, the prime directive, yeah, like humans aren't ready for this, they're not ready to be Starfighters, they're not ready for the Star League. I have a lot of ideas, man. I literally have a whole movie. And what's interesting is the protagonist is an expecting father. So I have a bunch of different characters from all over the world, but the main character is this guy who is expecting and is realizing like, man, I'm not gonna have a lot of time to play video games, and is in his early 30s, and it was about the time where I thought of this idea and was like, it'd be neat if you had that character. So not just Alex growing up and being like, I gotta get out of this trailer park. It's kind of somebody who like, it's time to settle down. It's time to stop playing video games, time to put aside childish things and focus on being a dad, raising a family, focus on your job, focus on being responsible. And so that's kind of the catch, is that he at when he's in this period of his life, he discovers, wait a minute, whoa, there's way more to this game than I thought there was. And so it's do I want to go full board and join the Star League, or do I want to go back home and obviously be with my family? So, yeah, I have opinions about Last Starfighter. We can maybe talk about that more later on. Daniel Ribeiro, I wanted to ask you if Amanda's still there, what are things you both, or just you, are most looking forward to do and or be as parents? One of the things that I'm looking forward to is I'm looking forward to not worrying about being proper with like the kid. You know what I mean? Like somebody has a kid and they're like, hey, it's my kid. And you're like, ooh. And it's just like, it's literally like you're holding like a bunch of like really expensive dishes and you're like, cool. Okay. Yeah. Hey buddy. Hey. And like, it took me a while. I think I mentioned that before, but our godsons, I think, was one of the first times where I was like, yeah, okay, I feel okay holding this kid because like I'm close enough to them and they trust me and I trust them, and I think this is all right. But I remember the first time, the first time ever that I had a close friend that had a child, I was terrified of that kid. I was like, no, I don't want to get anywhere near that kid. I'm gonna mess that kid up, man. I'm way too young and irresponsible. Really expensive dishes is the best analogy I have, Tokyo Slim. What? Really expensive dishes. So I'm looking forward to I'm still probably going to be really nervous around that kid, but just the idea of, this is totally a baby question. Sorry, I guess we've moved into baby talk. We do have one more open world question from Alexander coming up after this, but so I'm just looking forward to not being like, I don't want to, mess with this kid in terms of what what standards their parents have. Like, I got my own standards. Another thing too is I don't know what it is about baby cheeks. Babies just have the cutest cheeks. Sometimes you meet a baby and just like, those cheeks, my God, just these chewy cheeks. I just want to chew on those cheeks. You know what I mean? I just want to get a baby cheek. I just want to chew on it. Like Big League Chew. I don't know why. I don't understand why that's weird. I don't understand why that's too much to ask. We moved into baby talk. Aren't you a good little boy? Yes. I love it when Bloodworth talks baby talk to me. So I'm literally like, you will catch me at 4 a.m. trying to rock that baby to sleep. Just like, the kid's like, stop chewing on my cheek, Dad. I'm like, I'm sorry. The cheek is just so chewable. Just chewing those cheeks. That's what I'm saying. You're like, no, you saw me chewing on your kid's cheeks. I was chewing those cheeks. That's going to be me. See, again, that's what I'm saying. You're just like, wait, no, I'm not comfortable with this. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's But no, specifically, are there things you are dreading and anxious of? Money. But most important of all, now that you're both going to be parents, have you thought about what kind of legacy that you will leave both while alive and after you've gone, and what the things you look look forward to pass on to your child or children as they grow up? Yeah, my parents always had this like relentless enthusiasm for whatever I was involved in. I was very, very lucky. I know there's a lot of people that have made all sorts of various decisions throughout their childhood that maybe their parents weren't necessarily cool with. And my parents were always very supportive. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to, trying to step away in terms of like the ideals that I have. Amanda's an actor. I am, a video producer. And so like, we're very involved in entertainment. And so I don't want there to be this like pressure of entertainment on this kid where it's like, get up on stage, get in commercials, and so I'm excited to just kind of see naturally what that kid gravitates towards. For some reason, I'm always interested in like what the popular media is. That's like my big question. Whenever I bump into parents, I'm like, what are they watching? What's like the number one show? And it was interesting going and like registering for things and being like, okay, we got Justice League. Okay. And like Dora the Explorer, right? SpongeBob, right. And like Paw Patrol. Okay. I got to update myself on Paw Patrol. Nice. So even if I'm not watching all these shows, even if I don't know the names of the characters, like I still like to know these shows exist. Amanda does voiceover, and so she's auditioning for a lot of these shows. And so it's just nice to know like kind of what the kid market looks like. And so it'd be interesting to get like that firsthand on a consumer level, pure brand manager speaking now of just like plopping that kid in front of a TV and being like, here, you take the remote and let me know when it stops. Kid Jones will rebel by becoming a city planner. I can't wait. I want that kid to get a much more consistent job than I have. Consistent hours. Yeah, get into construction. And then that should have been a baby question, but Alexandra Nilsson Tofsa asks, as the token tower guy of Easy Allies, which open world game do you think has the best towers? I liked the towers in Far Cry 4 because it was in first person, and so it was kind of scary climbing them. So it was kind of fun to be like walking across planks and like looking straight down. There was some game had really scary looking. Dying Light 2 looks like has some really scary platforming. Looks really fun. You got to get up really, really high and then just kind of inch your way across, climbing up things. So I'm looking forward to that. But my easy answer would be Horizon because they move. Horizon was really fun tracking those things and seeing where they would walk, and then kind of looking at like, okay, if that thing is going to walk around there, where's the best? Oh, and then you see like a cliff. Like, okay, I think I jump off of that cliff onto it. And it'd be neat to see that technology, to see those things maybe evolve. Maybe you have to like fight them first in Horizon 2, or maybe there's multiple ways to get up on it, or maybe you have to like hack it in a certain way to like change its movement patterns and then get on it, or maybe there's a more complex procedure when you get on it. But I had a couple of really exciting moments in Horizon when I was trying to get on those things. One time, and you can actually see, I believe I put it at the end of my Horizon review. And so when we do hey, we're Easy Allies. If you want to, follow us on Patreon or support us, you can at the end of all of our reviews. If you see that clip, I was in a camp. I was in an enemy camp, and it was one of those that they put inside of a camp. So it just walked through a bunch of enemies. And I was like, I want to see if I can get over to it, but I don't want to fight all these dudes. And I was like, I wonder if I can just run. And so I was like hiding in a corner, and then I just made a sprint for it. And there were a bunch of guys there, and they're all like, oh, it's her, Aloy. And they all start shooting at me, and I'm running. And then I just timed it perfectly. So like right when this thing walked by this ledge, I jumped off as all these like lasers are shooting at me, and managed to jump and grab onto it. And, that's one of those moments where I'm glad I'm reviewing something. I'm glad I'm capturing the footage, because it's like, oh, well, that was neat. I would tell that story to someone as I just told it to you, and it would be much less exciting than it was at the time when you actually saw it. But, and you can now go revisit that moment if you watch my review of Horizon Zero Dawn. Cloisterans Vox says the towers in Breath of the Wild were better than Horizon. Yeah, the towers in Breath of the Wild were pretty cool. They're up there for sure. The thing that I liked about the towers is the moment I realized how they worked and that I could fast travel to them, I was like, oh, I'm going to do all of those right now. And I did all the towers. I did all the towers before I did anything in the story, or before I was just like, oh, there's a tower over there. And I walked on over and I climbed up on stuff and went over and did it. And there were some that I was clearly like not ready for. And I'm just like, I'm just still gonna. There was one where like there were a bunch of those turret things that were like all aiming and shooting at me as I was climbing up it. And I was like, just gotta go straight in. Horizon had just a few variations on the tower hunt. Nearly every tower in Breath of the Wild varied. That is true. I just think the whole idea of what the towers did in Horizon was in and of itself pretty clever. All right, there's only 3 baby questions, or 4, but these were specific, just baby questions. So I'm keeping that to the end. Maybe here on one last chug of the smoothie. And yeah, Horizon only had like 5 of those. So again, that was nice. And it's interesting to think of what you mean by towers, because like Division has like checkpoints, which are usually what towers do in open world not only open world games but Ubisoft open world games. So whereas most games will not have towers moving forward, they still and there were some interesting viewpoints in Odyssey. Man, there was a ton of those. I think there's like 60 or something in that game. So it'll be interesting to see if towers evolves into like literal towers, or we're talking about the concept of towers. All right, let's wrap it up with some baby questions. Tyson Wynn, any subtle jokes, hints that you've dropped about the pregnancy that you're proud of? I talked to Kyle about this on the showcase. If you want to go check it out. Oh, God, I don't remember. I think it was at the Monday meeting. Or not the Monday meeting, but I think it was at our monthly meeting. I think it was 2 months ago. I want to say at the end of March. Might have been the end of February when I told the Allies. And I think it was the following podcast, if not the podcast after that. And there was a love and respect question on the podcast from Kyle. Well, obviously Kyle picks them, and I don't remember who it was from, but they said, I'm about to have a kid, and I don't know how I'm going to fit in games, or want to know if you had any suggestions about how I can continue to play video games even with a child. And I think not only Kyle brought that question up, but specifically asked the first panelist, what do you think? And then they answered. And then he said to the second panelist, and they answered. And then he said, and what about you, Jones? And not only did he say, what about you, Jones, but both panelists like turned their head and stared at me. And they all kind of were slightly grinning. And I was like, all right. So I'm interested to answer that question without, giving it away. But I didn't like go out of my way to do anything, jokes or hints. I certainly didn't want to do any hints because I didn't want anybody guessing at that. Like I wanted that to be a big secret. But baby stuff just comes up. People just mention babies. They just say, oh, hey, I just had one. And it's really nice and comforting to hear from parents. I have a lot of people on social media and a lot of people here on Patreon that are just like, just had a kid. You're going to love it. It's a lot of work, but it's a huge deal. So I am anticipating that it will be a huge deal, but it's good to hear. Eric Jackson, on the topic of bebés, a gamer friend of mine who is also a father is raising his children with a healthy appetite for games, but he is introducing them to games on a generational level. They are 3 and 6 respectively and mostly play the NES and SNES before they'll be able to graduate up to more recent games and consoles. How do you think you might introduce your kiddo to games when the time is right? Will it be with games in mind, consoles, ease of play that will reward them the most at a low skill level to keep them engaged and interested? I'm really intrigued with a lot of the learning tools that are now available on tablets. So I imagine before that kid gets good at a NES or SNES controller, they'll be playing games, or they'll be doing interactive things on a tablet. The idea being that I would do that stuff with the child, that it wouldn't just be like, here, take your iPad, go to bed. But it'd be fun to see them, work on spelling and work on vocabulary and work on identifying shapes and colors and animals and stuff like that, and ways we can possibly chart that, or maybe a game that we could play that I could have on my phone, and the kid could just borrow mom's iPad and play it. And again, I don't want to. Amanda's actually very much opposed to that. Amanda's very much opposed to like the TVs in the van, the minivan kind of thing, where it's just like, oh, put the kid back with put the headphones on with the phone, and then we don't have to worry about the kid. She definitely wants to talk while we're driving and communicate with the kid as much as we possibly can. We say that now, and that just seemed, I know there's a lot of parents who like, you say that now. Like 8 months later, you're just like, thunk, pacifier, iPad, leave me alone. So we'll see. But I don't have a lot of expectations when it comes to like how how the kid, because I don't know, by the time that kid's finally able to actually like pick up a controller, it would probably be like 5 or 6. Probably be the earliest that they can actually like really skillfully get good at something. Like I was terrible at the NES, for a long time. I remember Super Punch Out was the first game I ever played on the home console. I played lots of video games before that, but like on a system that we own the Atari, but like in the NES when we got it, I realized like, oh, I'm not good at games. This is a hard game. I'm gonna have to get good at this. I don't know if I don't want to like put a controller in a kid's hand and have the kid be like, I'm not into this. And then like, well, get better at it. And be like, okay, they don't have to play video games. Sebastian Hall, will the baby be the 10th official ally now? No. Are you and Amanda excited to become parents? Not at all. Yes, we're extremely excited. If you slept a little before, does this mean you won't sleep at all now? This is true. I will be not sleeping at all, but thankfully you won't have to see that. I will be in very poor shape in terms of my sleep schedule, but I will be on vacation. I'll be out. If you get updates from me, they will be maybe a tweeted picture here and there. Maybe, like I said, thinking about doing a text only. Maybe keep the personal questions out of it. Maybe I'll do a little bit of personal questions, but mostly business updates on Cup of Jones during the time that I'm gone. Because that's something I can put together throughout the week and answer questions as they come up throughout the week on Cup of Jones. I can have my laptop in the living room and then just like have the kid, like in a little basket or something like on the table, or either like in a it's fun. We've got all sorts of fun little toys. We got like the walker that you can like pull the thing out and flip it over and put it back in and then like cover it and do all sorts of fun stuff. Like I said, when I was getting a stroller, it felt like I was buying a car. Yeah, but I'm not only, because the thing is, from what I'm analyzing, looking ahead at that lack of sleep that everybody says is so brutal, that again, like in a weird way I have been training for kind of all my life. I think it's not only the lack of sleep, because it's one thing if like I have a project or something and it's like, oh boy, I'm not going to sleep tonight. It's not the lack of sleep. It's like the uncertainty about sleep. It's like, I don't know when this kid's going to fall asleep again. I don't know when this kid's going to make noise. I don't know, when I'm going to have to get back up. I know that like every 2 hours I have to feed this kid or change diapers or, adjust, the way this kid is sleeping. And I think it's just kind of that uncertainty. I think that's like that. It's one thing to get sleepy and fatigued. It's another thing to like when the madness starts to creep in, when you're just like, I don't know when I'm going to sleep again next. Like, I don't know what the next thing to expect is. And I think when you, hopefully I've been training myself for that as well. Just kind of waiting on approvals from things or waiting on scripts to come in or the process of like getting reviews up super late at night, and just this idea of like, I don't know when the next shoe is going to drop. And so I'm just kind of, I'm prepared to just give up my schedule and see what happens. So I hope I'm prepared at least for that. I am. And one of the things also that I'm looking forward to is the things I'm not prepared for. And it's been interesting throughout the pregnancy to become more accustomed to those things. Like I felt the baby kick for the first time like a week or two ago. And that was crazy. That affected me a lot more than I thought it would. One thing that wiped me out much more than I thought it would was the ultrasounds are really fun. So it's fun to see, a little like H.R. Geiger version of what your kid looks like, to see the spine, just like, it's creepy. But, and there was like a 3D imaging that they did, and they're like, this is gonna look really weird. And I was like, I've seen weirder things. It's just a baby. What are you gonna do? I've made, creepier monstrosities than that in dreams already. And, but the first time I heard the heartbeat, was not prepared for that. That was very moving. That was very wild. To just be like, oh, let me flick the switch, and wow, 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 wow. And it's crazy because, the heartbeat so much faster than ours, and a lot faster than it'll be, because it's just this little tiny heartbeat. Yeah, that was wild. Rammer, I thought I would give you a platform to let us know how you feel so far a week after your announcement. How do you feel about your audience suggesting personal ways to handle being a parent and your baby? I feel okay about it. Just know, I'll tell you this. If there's something, there are some people in our community that wanted to tell me something that they believe very strongly about having a baby. A lot of people have their own opinions about having a baby. And you're free to share those opinions. If you have a question, you want to know something, I will use my discretion whether I think it's appropriate to answer on this show. And if you have some kind of medical advice or something that you recommend, is like, go for it. Like, again, not week to week, but again, I read every single comment, even though if it's not a question that I bring up again on Cup of Jones. But so I will read that. I will take it under advisement. If it is a suggestion and I don't end up doing it, and then you come back later and say like, hey, I noticed that you didn't do that to your child, and I think that was a mistake, that's kind of crossing the line. Like, we will certainly make whatever health, lifestyle, personal choices that we need to make for this kid. And so I will like most certainly draw the line there in terms of like, oh, you're not going to do that. It's like, no, I will take your advice, but this is not, Easy Babies Patreon. It's just like just about as personal as something can get with me. And so much of my life is very exposed and is very much, out there for welcome to my garage. A lot of this is out there in terms of for you to enjoy and absorb. And, I imagine you will get probably more of this kid than we have planned. So I don't mind the advice coming in. I just hope it doesn't get like salty in the future or something. You must be getting an enormous amount of advice, which is good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, love the advice, but it can be overwhelming. Again, you just got to take everything with a grain of salt. But the advice is rad. Like, it's especially because Amanda has a close friend that has a kid that's almost 1 year old now, and so it's just perfect. Like, all of this stuff is completely fresh in her mind. We're getting lots of hand-me-downs in terms of equipment and furniture and clothes and various supplies, and that like totally helps. So all those resources are really great, just because it's good to get life experience, and even like in chat, last week, and even just some people describing their stories. Some people are like, hey, having a kid is easy. My kid sleeps 6 hours every night, and it's great. And then someone else is like, man, I'm jealous. My kid has been very sick during the first year and had all sorts of issues. So regardless of what our experience is like, it's good reading that stuff to just kind of prepare yourself for all of the various things that can happen. Because that's kind of baby knowledge is, okay, that year is over. Here's what happened. There's not a lot of like pre-planning you can do in terms of like baby research, because it's not like, here, give your baby this experimental medication and we'll see what happens. So a lot of that's when you have these stories, when you have these firsthand accounts, like they're gold. Like you really need that stuff. What in your mind would cross the line of helpful advice to backseat parent? If you like, come back with a comment like a third time, it's like, you haven't addressed this. It's like, easy. I'm not coming to patreon.com for baby advice. As a public figure, I assume it can be tough to know how much access you want to give in your audience. Just thought this would be interesting for you to answer. And I feel great about it. It's nice to just have everybody know. It was, I think it was kind of nerve wracking when we first found out. I think it got easier as the weeks went on, but just realizing like, man, I can't spoil that. We can't say too much. Because obviously, in the first couple of months, you don't want to say anything because the odds of miscarriage are still pretty high. And so you don't want to make an announcement that then, 2 weeks later you have to make, or whatever time later you have to make do you mind receiving baby gifts for the end of group streams? Asking for a friend. Yeah, I thought Amanda brought that up. She was like, oh no, people are going to send you baby stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. I never want to say no to presents. Presents are great. Like if there's something you really want to send me, that's fine. I just worry about the other allies. I worry about it being like the end of July and the guys are like, okay, Jones, this is the gift portion of the Tuesday night group stream has just kind of become a little baby shower every week for Jones, like, so I just don't want to inflict the other allies with that. If people send me stuff, as always, that regardless of whether it's for the child or for myself or for any of the other allies, it's always appreciated and always a lot of fun to do that live. But I'm nervous that, me being excited, because like, I don't know if you ever had that. Amanda's had that before, where like some of her friends are having babies and then it's like, oh wow, okay, I guess this is all we're talking about now. So I hope the allies aren't just like, God, again with Jones's kid. Oh, shut up about that kid. It's bad enough we're all gonna have to do his work in 4 weeks. It feels good. It was fun, and we certainly got a great reaction from everybody, and it was fun. Amanda was originally opposed to doing some kind of big announcement or video or something, and then she was actually the one that came up with that trailer idea, so it's fun to see her come around for that. Blood says, the gifts always make me feel awkward anyways. Much easier for me to deal with Jones getting baby stuff. Well, there you go. Take it under advisement. And my main takeaway for today is to make a graphics package for the Patreon podcast plug. Say that 3 times fast. Which is a wonderful idea. And we're just under 2 hours for this episode of Cup of Jones. Thanks to everybody for keeping it light for this week. And I got a special treat for everybody right at the end of this episode. I was going to put it in last week's episode, but I was like, that's too much. That's too much to do. But before we wrap it up, I just want to say again, thank you for all of your wonderful baby sentiments and your congratulations. And like I said, it's you're going to get advice from everybody no matter what. So I want to hear your baby stories. I want to hear, any advice that you have, just as long as there's the caveat that I can completely ignore it because it's my baby. Whatever wall I try to erect between the real world and this gorgeous child that we're going to be gifted in the month of August, I'm sure that kid's gonna get out, and I'm sure it won't be too long before Easy Allies is just covered in baby food. No, but it will be fun, and it'll be interesting to see how Cup of Jones evolves as we get into that. But one thing that I am worried about, I'll tell you this: a concern that I have moving forward is Norbert is going to love this baby because Norbert loves interesting smelling things. So Norbert's just going to be like all over the baby all the time. He's going to be generally cool with the whole thing. He's actually very, very good. He's not a very claws out kind of playful cat. Like he's very gentle with things. And so I think he's going to be very gentle, but who we all should really be worried about is the Soph dog, because she is not going to be the cutest member of the household anymore. Things got a little rough when Norbert came around, and she still kind of, knocks him to the side a couple times, tries to help him relearn the pecking order, the way things go here in the household. But Sophie's about to, be knocked down a little bit in terms of who's the cutest in the house. It was Amanda, and then it was Sophie, and then it was Norbert. Now it's going to be this kid. And I feel bad because there's a lot of coming and going when Tuesday night group streams get set up. And so I have not brought Sophie by the studio to be around more. She popped up on the Q&A the other day. But so apologies to everyone that since we moved into the studio, they haven't gotten a ton of Sophie time. So here's a little Sophie present at the end of this Cup of Jones. The other day, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I was in the kitchen and Amanda was preparing something, and I think she spilled some olive oil or something on the floor, and Sophie just loves being around the floor. She's a vacuum cleaner. She's just constantly like, somebody dropped something. There's got to be something for me to eat. And I think she licked a little bit of that, and she got a little bit, you can see it in this video, she got a little bit on her lower lip. And so she licked her chops. That is what I like to call it. When Sophie licks those chops, she licked her chops for 10 minutes straight. So this might seem a little weird. This might seem like something's wrong with Sophie. Sophie's just loving life in this clip. But to wrap up the end of Cup of Jones, thank you for watching, everybody. Here is Sophie licking her chops for a full minute. Take care, everyone. And I'll see you soon. Again, we're playing World War Z tomorrow night, Tuesday night group stream. Have a good week, everyone. Cheers.